Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and today you guys already know what it is. We're here to talk about the Koby Altman presser, something we've been waiting on for a while. And this one should be interesting, not only because I'm going to talk about Koby, but because I have my daughter here with me as well. Montana is probably going to let herself be known. You guys are probably going to hear her throughout. So I'm going to try and make this short and sweet. And boy, oh boy, Koby really, I don't want to say he gave us a lot, but there was also some not coach speak, some GM speak here. He started off his presser basically by thanking JB Bickerstaff for his contributions over the years. He was very complimentary, to be honest, and he wished him nothing but the best. And I completely understood that, right? I mean, JB, he did his thing. He wasn't necessarily the coach probably to lead this team into contendership, but he was certainly a great coach for the rebuilding Cavaliers. And I think we can all agree with that. He had his deficiencies, most of them on the offensive side of the ball, whether it be rotations or ATOs at points or knowing when to call a timeout to hold a team's run, things of that nature. There were a lot of things that JB struggled with on the offensive side of the ball. He was pretty great defensively. He got the Cavs to a top 3 defensive rating in the last 3 seasons, right? That said, we got a lot. I mean, the first question right off the bat, if I'm not mistaken, came from Chris Fedor. It sounded like Fedor anyways. He was basically asked about the decision in regards to letting go of JB or dismissing JB. And he said it was an incredibly difficult decision, right? He wants to find someone ultimately, though, with a new voice, a different approach. He doesn't want to get complacent despite making it to the Eastern Conference semis. He doesn't feel like the team is far off. And I think when you listen back to his interview in its entirety, it comes across that way, right? He still believes in this core group of guys. He still believes this team has what it takes to advance further and to achieve their long-term goals, right? Which is a title. That's what I got from listening to him. But initially, right off the bat, was the first question. We all knew that was coming based upon JB being dismissed. Fedor also asked him about a potential extension, to which Altman basically said that in his exit interview, Donovan talked about the future and is really excited about the team's potential, that he likes it here, that he's happy here, and that Koby feels good about where the team is at with Don, but stopped short of saying basically that the deal is in place because we all know that they can't do that right now, right? It's tampering, as they say. But Donovan is not necessarily somebody that is going to let his intentions be known right up until we know that, it's announced that he's signed on the dotted line. So this is going to play out over the course of a few weeks or months or however long it may take. He was asked about Donovan Mitchell's influence on the decision-making process and said that he'd love his feedback in terms of the coaching search, in terms of potential free agents. Once we get to that point, I'm sure he'll have some type of input on all of these things, right? Maybe even the draft. You never really know. He was asked about the pairing of DG, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, and he thought there was a lot more evidence to suggest that it works than that it doesn't, which from a statistical standpoint, from a net rating standpoint, that certainly yields true, right? There was a lot more over this 2-year sample size that would indicate that the pairing actually works more than it doesn't. He said that it's just year 2, right? And he hinted at the importance of continuity and how much of a role it plays long term. And that he reiterated that he's not content with where they're at, but acknowledged that there is still a lot of room for growth and that runway that is still there. And that runway and that timeline was something that was initially discussed when they brought Donovan Mitchell on. If you guys remember back during that initial presser, he talked about how the timeline was expedited, but that there was still a runway, right? He also was asked about the injuries, and Koby talked about how much that played a role in this season and how great it was to have the necessary depth to keep the team afloat, like being able to slide Evan over to the 5 whenever Jarrett Allen went down and Donovan over to the point guard, which is something that propelled the Cavs to one of their better stretches this season. Mentioned how the Cavs core their projected starting five played just 28 games together this season, but that he also didn't want to use them as an excuse. He pointed to the NBA playoffs and the number of injuries league wide as an issue. And I think that's a good way to look at it, honestly. He talked about how much the 65 game participation rule may have played a role in the scheduling, for instance, like the 3 games and 4 nights and the back-to-backs and things of that nature. And once you figure out how to navigate the 82 game schedule, said that the most healthy teams are the ones still playing right now, right? Man, you're not gonna make this easy on me, huh? He talked about the emergence of depth and guys like Sam Merrill and Craig Porter Jr. and finding silver linings like that in the wake of these injuries, which was an interesting point, right? It was often said that JB struggled when he had the full team at full strength, right? But that he excelled when the chips were down and he wasn't working with much. And I think a big part of that was guys like Sam Merrill really emerging. And then the undrafted free agent presence that is Craig Porter Jr. looking NBA ready right out of the gate. Definitely still has some things to work on, like the 3-point stroke. But I think that the depth portion of this team is definitely a good point for him to have hit on. When asked about his expectations for the 2023-24 season, he said he wanted it to be highly competitive in the playoffs and that he thought they were, but that injuries did, in fact, play a role. Said it was hard to say that this season isn't exactly a success based upon what happened. And it seemed to me that he believed that this season was a success. Seriously. In terms of the coaching search, the timeline, he didn't really give us any updates on candidates. He said that the team is going to take the weekend to dive in and that he wants to map it out and discuss how the search 5 years ago is completely different than this upcoming search, and that people might see that as that they have no game plan, like just firing JB and not really having a real vision on what they want to accomplish in terms of who they hire. But honestly, I don't see it that way. I agree, right? I think the decision is going to be entirely different. The process is going to be entirely different. And he hinted at that, like the questions that he'll be asking, the things that will be brought up, the goals, things of that nature. It's all going to be a lot different than it was 5 years ago when they brought in John Beeline, if you guys don't remember that, which is a debacle and a disaster within its own right. He said that Dan Gilbert, much like we've been hearing recently, will be heavily involved and that he'll have an influence on what they will do. But ultimately, the front office will run the search, and that that the lists that people like myself and others have out, like Dave Adelman, Chris Quinn, Kenny Atkinson, Sam Cassell, many other names out there that people have brought up, Micah Nori. There's just a ton of names. He said that just isn't true, but that's debatable. I don't believe that. He reiterated that they are going to take the weekend to kind of evaluate the process here. And I get it. It's a holiday weekend. Didn't want to give away too much, but I honestly don't see a world in which they don't have some sort of process here. They don't have some sort of plan in place before they let JB go. I know that Donovan probably played a role here. He gave his opinion, but to me, I think they have an idea on what they want to do. Big yawn. Big yawn. They have an idea on what they want to do. He said that a new approach was needed. When again prompted on this, when asked about the decision making in regards to JB, he basically said that a new approach was necessary and needed, and that basically it was time to move on. Like, I don't know how much else that JB could have said or what else could have been done in order for him to stay one more season, because somebody did ask him about that. He was asked about roster alterations, and he said that he doesn't see sweeping changes, right? And it sounded to me like he wants to keep the core four together, and I think honestly that is the best route right now, at least for one more season, and to see if a new coach can make things work. we all know it's an imperfect fit, right? It is certainly an imperfect fit, especially from a balance perspective. When you're talking about size, right? We have the smallish backcourt, and we have two bigs, right? Two 7-footers, but we don't really have a true to size three. Max Strus is great in many areas, but size is something he lacks in when you're talking about that traditional three out there. But Koby, it sounded like he believes in the score from what I gleaned from it. And maybe it's just GM speak, like I said, but I don't know. Shit could change fast. We'll see. And when asked about creating more space with this group, he stated that it can be a little clunky offensively. But they have, in fact, been great defensively on that side of the ball, and that's where they made up a lot of it. And he thinks that Evan Mobley will further develop into a floor spacer moving forward, which time will tell, right? I think we all hope that that ends up being the case. But he did, in fact, discuss the difficulties between balancing player development for guys like Evan Mobley and winning now or winning big. And he thought the Cavs got away from prioritizing the development and unlocking, that's the word that was used, unlocking Evan Mobley. And he wants to get back to that, and he wants to focus on that moving forward. And I could not agree more. I think that is an excellent point. I think that JB was put into a difficult task at times when they acquired Donovan Mitchell and to forego the development of Evan Mobley. But at the same time, it's still JB's job to do that. And he failed to prioritize that at points. And I think that's on the organization too. I don't solely put that on JB, but I have to acknowledge JB's role in that. I know the Donovan Mitchell trade certainly expedited things in that regard. And I think the same can be said for a player like maybe Isaac Okoro, Darius Garland to a degree, many different regards. But he talked about the urgency and how much that played a role in dismissing JB Bickerstaff, and that he doesn't want to get complacent. He said it was a major decision to get rid of him, right? It's something that they did not take lightly, and that there's a long runway for this team in regards to talent and how it will, he wants to pull different levers to get the most out of this team. And one of those levers that he could pull was making a switch at coach, which we all know that is usually the biggest thing that you can do. Well, maybe not the biggest, but the first thing that you can do, the first big domino that you can make in terms of seeing what else you can do to change how a team or get the most out of a team moving forward. In regards to Darius Garland, he talked about how Garland saw the physicality this postseason and how this is going to be a big offseason for him. It's something that I could not agree more with. And to me, it's like, give this dude a chance. He had a rough season. I get it. But so many people were willing to throw this man out so fast because he had a rough year. And mind you, this is coming off of back-to-back all-star level seasons for DG. He had an injury to his jaw this season. The broken jaw caused him to miss a ton of time. He lost 12 plus pounds as a result, lost some explosiveness. It just lost his confidence in a lot of different ways. He was impacted by the injuries this season. I don't think I'm gonna be able to stay on here too much longer if y'all see. Interestingly enough, somebody actually asked actually asked Koby about his own job. And I thought that was funny. I thought that was a question that I think we were all waiting to hear. And basically Altman, GM speak, kind of sidestepped it, dodged it. He was asked about his job security and basically left it to the media to discern, right? And talked about how if he didn't improve upon the 22-win season, he would have already been let go, which we all know is the truth, right? But I thought that was a funny little question, and I thought it was definitely a necessary one because a lot of people have already hinted at the fact that, or the idea rather, that Altman should have also been let go. Something I disagree with, but I understand why people feel that way. But ultimately, he's here, and this is going to be a pivotal offseason for him. And if he doesn't get it right, he'll likewise be let go. When asked about the offseason additions from last offseason in Mack, Strus, and George Niang, he was complimentary and critical of both. He talked about how George was phenomenal during the regular season and providing depth, right, and stepping up when guys were out. And Max Strus specifically, he said this was the best season of his career. That he was very happy with the playmaking and that he didn't know that he had it in his game, and the defense and the leadership. I think we all saw that, especially in the game against Charlotte, where he just kind of seemed pissed off about the decision that was made. He thought that both could be much better, honestly, and I think that's something that we all agree with. You're looking at the shooting numbers specifically for those two, and you're like, man, these two guys, if they just knock down a few more shots, could definitely be in a different territory right now. We might still be playing, but yeah, I it's hard for me to fault Koby on Niang and Max just purely based upon at the time the decisions made sense. You could have acquired somebody else in place of Niang. I get that there were certain guys available. For sure, he wasn't the best player on the market, but at the time it made sense. He plays power forward. He came in with the track record of being able to space the floor 40% in 5 straight seasons prior to this season. But, I mean, he was atrocious this playoff. So I get why people are pissed about that. And then the Max thing, I don't understand why people would be upset about that. That isn't also a likewise addition that made sense at the time that it was made. The trade was Cedi Osman, Lamar Stevens. Both of them we are big fans of, right? And then some second round picks, if I'm not mistaken. When asked about Jarrett Allen, which was interesting, he talked about how important Allen was this season. Talked about how bad the rib injury was. And let me make this clear: Koby Altman did use the moniker rib piercing. He said that Jarrett Allen had a pierced rib. I've heard it said numerous times to me that a pierced rib is not a possibility. It's not something that is medically possible. It's not a medical term. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not affiliated to any hospital in any regard, right? I don't have a ton of medical knowledge. So all I can say is that is the term that he used, pierced rib. And so based upon what we heard from Koby, it was impossible for Jarrett to play through. He said that there were narratives placed out there that, there were different routes that Jarrett could have taken to play, but that did not ultimately, those were false. He dismissed those. Now, take that for what you will. Koby was honestly not going to go up there and say, yeah, Jarrett Allen could have taken a shot and he should have played. If you were wanting to hear that, I mean, I'm sorry. That just was not going to be the case. What I found interesting was the word that he kind of used to describe Jarrett, and that was equity. That was the word he used to describe his value to the team. To me, it sounded like he believes in Jarrett Allen, and that's what I got. He doesn't see a strain in the relationship. When he was asked about that, he was very forthcoming because with all these rumors swelling around, I mean, how could you not wonder if the potential relationship between these guys has been fractured, things of that nature. But I get it. Hopefully the core 4 is brought back. Thank you guys for sticking with me on such short notice. Even though I got my daughter here, just, kind of moving about here. You might see her. I don't know. But I don't think we got a ton out of the presser. I don't think anybody was expecting to get a ton out of the presser, but for what it's worth, I did walk away believing that Koby Altman still believes in this core 4. I do believe that there is a reality next season in which we see Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen back on that court in the starting 5 next season, contrary to popular belief. And we've seen the rumors come out say that, hey, if Donovan Mitchell extends to a long-term contract, Darius Garland might look to be traded. We've seen that be put out there, but I mean, it is yet another fruitless narrative at this point. We haven't heard from Darius Garland himself. We've only heard from quote unquote representation in regards to Rich Paul and Clutch, and Clutch Sports Agency, right? And so until we see something definitive, I'm not gonna get too up in arms about anything. I still believe in this core, as it sounded like Koby does as well. And hopefully, going into this offseason, we do a couple of things to make this team better, right? He talked about how making moves on the margin could be yet another possibility. Now, what that means, I do not know. He could be talking about free agent moves. He could be talking about some trades possibly on the pipeline, or he could be talking about the draft, which the Cavs have the 20th overall pick, and I do believe they can get a day one contributor out of this draft. But time will tell. Thank you, guys. As I always tell you, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to It's Cavalier53 at gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. If you want to support the podcast in a small but helpful way, consider joining Patreon as a paid member over there. As I continue to say, I'm going to continue to make content. Either way, I love the Cavaliers, but it definitely helps, especially in terms of time, right? That said, go Cavs. Have a good one.